I did all of that with my life hanging in the balance, waking up and knowing that, like, if I make one mistake or if Mr. Texas decides to come fuck with me again or whenever and I could be gone, like, that didn't stop me from shooting. That didn't stop me from sharing my art. I had to straight up tell my lawyers, like, I'm not listening to your advice. I'm sharing my art and I'm going to keep shooting.
Hi everyone, it's Sam, NFT Statistics on Twitter, and today we have Drifter Shoots on the pod. Drift is one of the best-selling NFT photographers in the world, but he's had a very heavy couple of years dealing with the justice system. He spent many months of 2021 incarcerated, doing jail time in a couple of different states. The awful part, however, is that he was never actually found guilty of any crime, and the crimes he was charged with were all related to how he does photography. He's an urban explorer photographer. He climbs buildings and bridges to take photos from incredible vantage points, and a detective turned this into a robbery charge. For this, he spent 23 hours a day in a cell for many months, and the prosecutors and courts used the fact that he had served in the military against him, insisting that it meant that he was too high risk to give him reasonable bail. When he had only a small bit of money to his name, Drift told his lawyers he would make sure that they would get fully paid, and he made that money largely through selling his photography as NFTs. Drift is now one of the top NFT photographers in the world. He's had some of the absolute biggest sales, and his collection, Where My Vans Go, has been a massive success with floor prices in the 30 to 50 or even higher ETH range. This podcast is divided into two sections. The first goes over the story of the past couple years. I wanted to hear that narrative from him. The second goes over his work as a photographer, his approach to NFTs, and what lies ahead for him. I found it great to get to connect with Drift. He's a thoughtful, passionate, authentic person. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Drift, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on?
Why don't we just start by talking a little bit about your story, over the past 5 years. I think it's so core to your work, your NFTs, your art. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear a little bit about what the story is that kind of got you to where you are with your art.
I joined the Army in 2014. Fresh out of high school, I was really looking for something to help me be independent. Was a paratrooper, went through SEER school, air assault school, ranger assessment and selections. A lot of transition, was coming to that point in adulthood where I feel like everybody goes through a point where you have to kind of take accountability for what you suffered through as a child, and like take accountability for healing that yourself and figuring out who you are and what you want to believe as an adult. And so I was going through a lot of that. I was 21, I want to say, at that time, really just in a lot of ways finding my place in the world, discovering a lot more and forming a lot more convictions about my racial identity and how that clashed with my beliefs, continuing to serve in the military. And so I was just becoming a lot more conscious at that time. I had never really gotten into anything artistic, but my life was in a way kind of unraveling around me. Like everything I felt was my foundation was changing. I no longer was sure if I wanted to stay in the Army. In fact, I was starting to feel like I didn't want to. When I went into the Army, I thought I'd make it a career. So everything was changing for sure. And so I got a camera. I started driving like 3 hours to Houston, Texas, and just like shooting around with it, going on like photographer meetups and stuff. One night I went to Houston, Texas. I remember I couldn't sleep. Like I was just wide awake, and I drove there in the middle of the night. And then I took my camera, and there was a skyscraper under construction, about 50 stories tall. I don't know what drew me to it. I can't really explain it to this day, but it was like, okay, I have to go to the top of the skyscraper. I went in, took the stairs all the way up, climbed up on a roof structure, and just sat there for a number of hours and took horrible photos because I sucked back then. But I felt so incredibly at peace, and at the time I wasn't diagnosed, but I would go on to be diagnosed with PTSD. That very same year, I would lose 2 of my soldiers to suicide that I worked really intricately and closely with. And I'd also be diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I exited the army, which was something that I kind of always knew that I like suffered from, but I was still getting over like stigmas around mental illness in the army and in my personal life and just like growing up, um, you know, in a Black family and like, like Black men, like mental illness is like a very stigmatized thing for us. That we just don't talk about it. We don't put labels to it. I'd keep shooting. I went to New York the summer of 2018, and 220 Central Park South was under construction. I ended up climbing it, shooting it, and I'm standing on an unfinished like luxury balcony overlooking Central Park, and like I remembered a moment like it was yesterday. I just thought like, whatever this is, I want to do this forever. I retired out of the army in March of 2020, after injuring my right leg. And I just put my all into shooting. I just knew that I love this art form so much. And I felt like that the world needed to see a lot more. And I was so convicted about it. But more than that, it was my purpose and it was healing me, Every time I go out and shoot, it's a healing process for me. And then, the part of my story that, everyone kind of asks about, which is super in-depth, but I'll give the Cliff Notes version. My home city was Cincinnati, Ohio. I, on November 27th of 2020, went to shoot Great American Tower, the tallest building in Cincinnati, and I ended up passing a security camera on the top floor that night. The police were called. I climbed the crown on the top of the building and shot it, got out of the building. And while the police were in the building, 20-something police officers, like 10 bomb dogs, were inside the building. And I had no idea that there was such a police presence in there. I just was making my work and left. 3 weeks later, I'd be in on the road going to shoot my first product shoot in Las Vegas, Nevada. Literally, the highway I was on would get shut down. I did not know that FBI, Homeland Security, Arizona State Police, in conjunction with the Arizona State Police, were all searching for me. A warrant had been put out for my arrest for armed robbery. Even though there was no evidence of me being armed, I was not. I didn't have any weapons license to my name at that time. And I had not robbed anybody. Once they found out about my military record, even though I am honorably retired after 6 years, I deployed once. I served in the highest of the highest levels of the Army. Took my military background, what they could find out about, like my PTSD diagnosis, and blew it into something that it was not, given my race, given the concoction of my military training and whatnot. Playing on fear was not a hard thing for him to do. So when that narrative was given to the Arizona State Police, they ran with it. They put out basically protocol for what they would use for murders, and were searching everywhere for me, tracking my phone. They hacked my Instagram. A lot of stuff happened, and then they shut down the highway. There's a helicopter. I remember we were driving. I was sitting passenger seat. My friend was driving, and we thought there was an accident, completely unaware of what was going on. I look out the window. I see cops all around us. I hear this loudspeaker. I'm ordered out of the car at gunpoint. I'm told if I move, they'll shoot me. Forced down onto the highway. Arrested, not told what I was charged with. Put in the back of the cop car, taken to the jail in Flagstaff, Arizona. The jail wouldn't accept me because I was sick and it was COVID time. So then they sent me to the hospital. They chained me to the hospital bed for 5 days. Kept me guarded around the clock. After that, they moved the officer to outside the door And when that happened, I convinced a nurse to show me how to call out on the hospital phone. I called my dad. My dad called what is now my lawyer on my case. After 5 days, they took me to the jail. I'd spent the first month in 23-hour lockdown. Still wasn't told what I was being charged with, not told when I was going to be sent back to Ohio because they arrested me on a fugitive warrant. I was denied bond. I was being charged with felony burglary for climbing and shooting Great American Ballpark. That carried a minimum of 2 years, maximum of 8. And that was just the beginning. I spent 2 months in Arizona. But in that 2 months, what the detective on my case was doing was they arrested me and they took my GoPro footage and they took my laptop and they took all these different things, hit the news and try to make it out like I had counter surveillance units working for me, that I was armed and dangerous. They used the one picture of me on active duty holding a weapon in plain clothes to make me look like the, aggressive, dangerous black man, so age-old tactics in America to basically make me guilty before I was ever guilty of anything and to justify everything that they did and were going to do to me. By the time I got back to Ohio in February of 2021, I was locked up in my own city. I finally got to meet the detective on my case. He tried to interrogate me. I basically told him to go fuck himself because my lawyer wasn't there. And he told me that I was never going to get out. That's the only conversation we've ever had. For the next 2 months, he was right. They called an emergency bond hearing where they argued, and I will never forget this. They argued that my military training, background, PTSD diagnosis, made me too dangerous to release to the public. And the judge that was sitting in for my judge that day raised my bond up to $400,000. April 9th, my judge agrees to let me out on an ankle monitor to drive down to Louisiana and turn myself in there. I get let out. First time in, 4 months, I'm out. I drove down to turn myself in and did everything the judge asked me to do. On the way back, the detective, furious that I had gotten out of jail and his plan had been somewhat foiled, tried to get a warrant signed in Kentucky for a misdemeanor trespass, shooting the rolling bridge. He didn't even have the warrant signed yet, and they still stopped me in the middle of the highway at gunpoint. Kentucky state troopers illegally seized my car, everything I had, the little bit of clothes and shit I had left, and left me stranded there. So I'm sleeping on the floor of my dad's, tiny apartment. The lead detective and 15 other officers would burst in at gunpoint once again, and arrest me there. And I almost broke that day, and I'm glad I didn't because I probably would have been dead. I was at a breaking point, but I didn't snap that day. I had a lot of very spiritual transitions while I was going through this. That was the day I was like, I'm at rock bottom. If I make it through today, everything will be up from here. And it was. That was the last day I got bonded. I got arraigned and got bonded out for the case that day. And then a week later, after I got out in April, the day after, I sat down with the New York Times, who had been trying to get into the jail to interview me, but they would not let them in. I sat down with Dave Phillips. That article will come out a week later, June 6, 2021, front page of the paper, and brought a lot of much needed attention to my case. And, from there, a lot changed. We were pushing for trial and they said, okay, what about we do a treatment in lieu option? He just needs to, he just needs to go to therapy for a year because they're convinced that I have something wrong with me because of how I choose to express myself. I said, yes, I'll do that. All the charges were held, so I wasn't convicted of anything. And during this past year, I won my Kentucky case, I won my Louisiana case, and now I've won my Ohio case as well. I told my attorneys when I was dead broke and on an ankle monitor that I would find a way to pay them. And I never questioned that because I knew how hard I would work for my life, my truths, my integrity, my work. When I got out and I saw the whole NFT scene, I got back on Twitter. I had never even heard of an NFT, but when I saw that, I was like, listen, this is the answer to a lot of problems I've been seeing. So I got my first punk.
What jumps out at me about your story is, first of all, everything you went through, all those months in prison or in jail, you actually never were found guilty of anything.
Nope.
And the only thing you were even charged with was climbing buildings and taking photography.
That's correct. Like in court, the lead detective said, I've not stolen anything. I've not hurt anybody. That's on record in court, but I was being charged as though I was being charged with criminal conspiracy, felony burglary.
Why do you think this detective had it out for you so bad? Of all the people out there, all the crime that someone deals with being a detective in a city in America, why do you think he had so much vengeance for what you were doing?
I think it was less about what I was doing, and I think it was, the honest answer is I don't know, because everyone speculates differently. You have tons of people who are like, oh, it's a race thing, and like Isaac's a black man, like one of them that chose to fight back, and I don't quit. I think it bothered him too, because I think that, like a lot of police officers, like they're basically the only members of society that can have so much control over other people's lives and well-being, and this gives so many of them a false sense of power. And I think that the biggest thing for him was just that I would not let him have power over me. I embarrassed him and his friends when I shot the tower and I got out of the tower and they were there looking, and that was his jurisdiction and his thing to protect. And I think that he just felt embarrassed. When he knew the truth about me, he could have turned back. When he knew that I had no record, that I had served in the military, that I had no bad like intentions or whatever, he could have been like, okay, I got this one wrong. Even if they just charged me with burglary for Great American Tower, right? Would have sucked, but it would have been a lot more reasonable than going on this onslaught and charging me for burglary for climbing a sensitive stadium. It was an onslaught of charges to make me quit, to break me, keeping me incarcerated on a high bond, knowing that I don't have money, knowing that I don't come from a family with money, just to break me, right? And the whole time I'm like, no, I won't break. I had friends on the outside running my Instagram page. I was sharing my writing and my art through my Instagram page. That shows you how dedicated I am to not just my art, but like my existence. It was like, you could do this to everybody else, and everywhere else I looked, right? I saw people just quit, right? Because that's the way that incarceration is meant to make you feel. It's meant to deteriorate you as a human being. You become a mindless zombie in there because you see the same things. You wake up, you're let out, you're fed at the same times. You no longer become a name. It was like, okay, everybody else can go through those motions and like quit and not push forward for their cases and whatever and give up, but like, I just won't do it.
It sounds like you had that understanding of the system strong enough that you knew, A, you had a right to remain silent. B, when people would attack, like you just had, like, you didn't want to give them any fodder. It just feels like you also just had an understanding that most people are unfortunately don't have, and that really seems to have helped you.
I'm privileged to understand what was happening to me. Like that. But I knew, like, I was looking at it and was like, okay, it's my turn now. Like, I've watched so many other people go through it. I've watched my own father go through it. But it was like looking at it and then looking around and seeing it and being like, fuck, like it's my turn, but that doesn't mean that I have to let it be me, right? Like the whole system is a trap. And I knew that, if I was going to get anywhere, I just had to fight like hell And I had to have enough conviction to where my lawyers could feel that conviction and share that conviction for me.
Yeah. And I mean, also just such a cool blessing that, and I don't mean to say anything about, like, this is just a terrible situation where there was nothing privileged about what was happening for you. But this great turn with the New York Times article exposed the injustice that was happening. How'd you make that happen? How does someone else make that happen?
I had rules for myself. When I was locked up, like I had 5 rules for myself, right? And I got a little notebook down here in this drawer from when I was incarcerated where I wrote everything down. Like I had these 5 rules and I wrote them on my cell wall. One of them was do what you can, where you are, with what you have, right? That was like law for me, right? Because if you get to feeling sorry for yourself, you're going to feel like, oh, I don't have anything. I'm running out of money. Nope. Like I was getting nowhere. I was getting nowhere for months, right? But I was still fighting, And so like what that looked like was I started asking myself, how do I win, right? The judge wasn't on my side. The cops were against me. They had 3 prosecutors to my 1 attorney. The public really didn't know. I was sitting there and I was like, how do I win? And I was like, court of public opinion. It has to be that the court of public opinion gets involved and puts pressure on them to do what's right legally. We need pressure for them to behave correctly legally so I have a fighting chance, right? So I told my lawyer, I was like, we need more media pressure on the case. And so we pushed. And first I contacted a friend of mine who was a reporter in Detroit. He reported on the story. And when I was in there, I was like, we need something bigger. So I called a friend who was like, I got an upstairs neighbor who works for the New York Times. I was like, okay, if you just mention it to her, like just run the story by her, pull the articles that have already come out. A month later, Dave Phillips from New York Times reaches out to my lawyer. Well, they wouldn't let him into the jail that whole month. So then when I got out, Dave flew in. I talked to him. 2 months later, that story came out. It just happened through literally through just not giving up. But that was how it happened. I just started making calls,
And right now, it's all behind you, right? Like, do you feel any fear about climbing? About because these are climbing buildings and stuff can be misdemeanors. Does any of that worry you at all, or is it just all over?
I never stopped. I didn't stop while I was on probation. I didn't stop. As soon as they took the ankle monitor off me, I was out that next weekend. Why? Because as an artist, the day artists start letting other people tell them how they should make their art and execute their vision, you already cease to be an artist right then and there. If I'm truly out here creating a body of work and love and I'm not bothering anybody, and, do you think that's immoral? Do you truly, at your heart, think that I should be charged with all these things I'm charged with and whatever? I'll leave that up to people to dive into the gray areas of life and discover for themselves. I never stopped because stopping would be giving them power over me, right? Like, if I let fear into my heart at any time, they would have crushed me. They would have crushed me because I would have thought, this is never going to work. I'm going to cop a plea to this and just go away and do several years in prison because if I try to fight through this, like it's only going to get worse for me or whatever. And that's what I was being told, right? But that's not what I believe. And artists should be disciplined and loyal to their vision before anything else. Like
that was one thing I remember. I think I was either read this or I heard this on one of the other podcasts, but was this idea that when kind of on the table was you signing that you wouldn't climb anymore, like that just was never on the table for you.
Yeah, I mean the thing was that like the deal I took was like if I got caught, I was going to prison, but I didn't get caught. So here's the thing, like I never stopped climbing. I took the deal and I knew the risks of the deal. But I also knew that, like, all right, I'm just going to be better. By that time, I had gotten my name out there and I had started doing so much better for myself that like I was turning judges, prosecutors, cops into believers, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, congrats on being where you are. Congrats on, I mean, I'm sure that when you said that you were going to pay off all your lawyer fees, when you had $8,000 to your name, it felt like such a stretch, and just so awesome that you got to this place where you are. You're free, as you should be. You never did anything wrong. Certainly did never anything that should lead to incarceration, and you're out there having paid everything off and building for a lot of people who are impacted by your work. So let's go back to Houston. That first, before you did that first climb where you climbed a 50-story building, had you ever done A, photography, and B, climbing, like just
no,
being in a place where you were at crazy heights?
no photography, climbing. Yes. Like I started like climbing trees as a kid, like at like 4. I don't even know. I was just a very active kid, whether it was climbing or bike riding or, every single sport you can imagine. Like I was always doing something. And then I was also in an airborne unit in the Army. So I was jumping out of planes, like, but it wasn't like a super alert to me to like be up high. I just felt very at home there.
One of the things that people use this term adrenaline junkie a little bit. And I'd say the experience I get as a viewer of your work is that I feel adrenaline, but I feel like you are at peace. It's like
Yeah,
this
I
weird
don't feel
thing where
any
I feel like you
adrenaline.
don't even feel fear.
No, I don't feel fear when I'm, like, am I careful? Yeah. My life depends on it, but I don't feel fear when I'm up there. I feel like I'm in my element, like I feel very, very, very focused, calm. It's a state of catharsis, because how many moments in life are you totally immersed, right? Not very many, right? But that's just like a drug, when you're really in it, and you can feel everything and you can sense everything, and like living life in tune like that, whether I'm on the ground or I'm up in the sky is like a big thing to me, So my art, it's immersion, it's like full immersion into life itself. And I feel very calm. Yeah. I will never subscribe to being an adrenaline junkie. I hate being called that. I never want to be called that ever again, but I know I will be. So it is what it is.
I always feel like it's the viewer that just feels that tenseness, because for us to be in that position, we would freeze up and be in but the people who are out there doing it, it's almost the relaxedness that is kind of the mind blowing part about it.
Yeah.
Is it a social experience? I hear you talk a lot about, I mean, I've seen you mention other people you shoot with, the community, obviously, I think that human element that is in some of your photos really just gives them another dimension. Is this a social experience, community for you, or is it a solo experience?
No, there is an urban exploring community, and there's tiers in it, like in the other community, you have your explorers that like go super hard and they do the hardest spots. And you have some people that just love exploring metro systems underground. Some people like rooftops and cranes and bridges and stuff like I like, and but I just like everything. I just like exploring the world. As far as the community aspect, like I have a few close friends in the community, or what I would consider to be close friends, but outside of that, it's just like I don't like any underground niche community. And when you're involved, with art and whatnot, there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of trying to control other people. There's a lot of envy over success. There's a lot of, because no other urban explorer has ever broken to the fine arts world before me, whether it be physically or digitally, there's never been this level of like success with it, so I shoot a lot by myself, but I also shoot with a small group of friends, and, it just comes down to intention with me. Like, I don't care if I had 1 penny or if I was a billionaire, I'd still be making my word. I never cared about money, like it's great. And as someone that grew up without it and like watching, what it's been able to do for my family and my friends I was incarcerated with and whatever for myself, like it's wonderful, And I went through a period with like adjusting to it and like, feeling the false sense of power that comes with it. And then like this past year, I like fell back from a lot of that and just like got more used to it and realized like it's an asset, it's a tool. But I just wanted to make my art, like when this community, it's hard to be in my position because there's a side of this community that thinks that everything should be underground, right? Everything we do, like, it's like graffiti writers that hate on Banksy, right? Why do they hate on Banksy? Because Banksy became rich. Like, Banksy was the one that blew up. Banksy was the one that the rest of the world recognized, right? While they're out there doing their thing and whatever, and they feel like it should be them. It's the same way in urban exploring, like, even if, like, if I was a nobody in this world and, like, hadn't gone through what I gone through, I probably would I still get a lot of respect. Like, people can't not respect my life and respect my story and respect my work. Like, even if they don't like me, like, they have to respect it, but I think that, like, because of my level of success and whatnot, like, it's been extremely alienating. I would say that I'm not as close with people in the community. I don't seek it out because I never needed anybody's outside validation. There is
Has anyone else dealt with the legal issues that you have, or is that pretty much just
not
you?
even close on the scale that I have. No. In fact, like, any other case I know that any other urban explorer has got is laughable in comparison to what I had to go through. I shouldn't say laughable because that comes off a little condescending, but it's an insensitive, but it's not even close. No one's gone through anything of this scale. There's alienation that comes with that too, because, not only am I one of very few Black urban explorers, so people aren't going to understand what it's like to explore while being Black and having the background that I have and whatever. But I've watched my white urban explorer friends be caught on buildings and on structures and get nothing, flaps on wrist, community service, let go, like, and, there's always the age old, like, yeah, I got arrested once and went down to the precinct. And, like, whenever my story gets brought up, other urban explorers have to go and tell their story of when they got caught and taken down to the precinct. It's not the same thing, It's like it's like borderline insulting when people say that to me. I don't even like it because I'm not trying to compare trauma, but that seems to be like a weird thing that a lot of them like to do. So I keep to myself and my close friends and my good friends I shoot with, and that's it. We shoot. I don't get caught up in the politics or the bullshit. I get a lot projected onto me. I don't let it bother me. I just go make my work. That's the one thing I care about is my work.
One thing I heard you say once in an interview is that you didn't really like your photography until 2020. And I'm curious, what changed for you then? And when you're thinking about your own work, what is it about your work that makes you like something and feel proud of something versus something you're not as excited about?
I was immersed in 2020. When I got out the Army, like, that, I took some good shots in 2019. Okay shots. But when I got out, I started really listening to myself, like, you see a lot of people's work and it's like, it's a carbon copy of a carbon copy of a carbon copy, especially in our community. There's only so many spots there. It's a niche community. People go to the same spots after somebody else has done it because they need that confidence boost first. They're not trailblazers. And they take the same shots and they put it online and their friends are like, you're the best, blah, 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 blah. And they get the real double hit. And then it's like rinse and repeat. And I didn't want to fall into that, Everything I do, I'm just trying to do it my way. I don't care what anybody else has done in the past. I don't care what anybody else tells me I should do. I don't listen to that shit. Like, I just do it my way. And I got really entrenched in that. I started going after things I never seen people do. Bridges and buildings and whatever. And I started taking compositions I wish I saw other people take. Now when I see people, like when I see some shots, I'm like, this is great, but like I would do it and take it this way. and add this or do this or whatever. And I'm always critiquing myself. I'm not like always critiquing other people, but I'm always critiquing myself, and I'm always like looking for a way to be better. Like I am thoroughly like self-critical, and I want to listen to my own inner voice. Like, and 2020 was the year where I really felt like I started doing that as an artist. And then it was no wonder that this happened to me at the end of this year when I look back at the end of that year, because when I look back at it, it was like, it was perfect timing. Because when I got incarcerated, I just transformed in there. My mind, the power, I mean, I will live with the scars of this period for the rest of my life, you know, like, and I'm starting therapy, the new therapist next week to like work through so much, because I'm just now getting to start healing. You can't heal on probation with, you know, shit over your head and like the worry and like, you can't heal, you know, so I'm just now getting to start my healing process and whatever. But I felt like I transformed in there too. Like any fear I had that was present in my life, this just extinguished it, you know, because all the demons, all the fucking, the worst shit you could possibly go through, I already lived through it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that they did not do to me was kill me, you know? And they came very, very close to doing that, you know? If I made one wrong move in any, like the amount of self-control, the amount of months I went without being able to say anything, the amount of courtrooms I had to sit in and like, just be quiet and just wait. The time I had to wait to see if my work would even make it in the world. Because what if I made it through all this, but I had nothing to show for it or whatever. Like I completely transformed. I transformed in the isolation of incarceration. My mind transformed, my body transformed, but my spirit was like, I can do fucking anything, you know? I didn't climb the Eiffel Tower until I was going through this. After this, I didn't climb the pyramid. I didn't climb the second tallest building in the world. I didn't climb other things that I haven't even put out yet, you know, that are fucking mind-blowing, mind-breaking. Like, I didn't do any of that until after I went through this, right? I completely transformed because I let it transform me. And when it comes back to my work, like, that journey really, really started when I got out of the Army, because I could pursue my art with my entire heart. You know, I was putting everything on the line, every dollar I had, every bit of time. You know, I was obsessive and relentless, and like, and I am now more than ever, you know, like, I'm done with this shit. If I built all this with that shit going on, imagine what I'm going to do with none of that weight on my shoulders, right? Like, I tell people that all the time. I'm like, I built where my vans go, and like some of this and everything that people know about me and NFTs and all of the stuff that I did all of that with my life hanging in the balance, waking up and knowing that, like, if I make one mistake, or if this detective decides to come fuck with me again or whenever, and I can be gone, like, that didn't stop me from shooting. That didn't stop me from sharing my art. I had to straight up tell my lawyers, like, I'm not listening to your advice. I'm sharing my art, and I'm going to keep shooting. I'm telling legal experts that, right? Because my spirit as an artist is way more important to nourish than any of that stuff, right? And that's what makes great artists great, is that you can't detach them from their vision. They are their vision, and their vision is them. Like, you can't derail them. You just can't. They're focused. No matter what you put them through, it's just going to make them better, right? Because they live and breathe as a living, breathing piece of art, work of art. Like, there's an art to living. There's an art to living right, you know? And like, that's what I'm after more than anything.
What are a couple pieces that you're most proud of and that you think have encompassed what you're saying?
Oh.
I've got your super rare piece. I don't know if the ones you're most proud of are on super rare, but are there any kind of in
Some
this
of them.
collection?
So if you go down, okay, Become the Storm, there, up, it is in the second row. Become the Storm, right there. And Our Home for My Ancestors. Okay, so sorry, Fat. Both of those are shot on the same bridge, approximately 8 months apart, right? So they're self-portraits. One of them was shot, A Home for My Ancestors was my first solo client after I got out of incarceration, right? And I took that self-portrait. I remember I drove an hour down to Simon Kenton, Kentucky, or down to Maysville, Kentucky, and I climbed the Simon Kenton Bridge, and I slept inside the bridge, and this fog just surrounds me in the morning. And I remember my heart pumping. I was like, I'm so visible on this bridge. But this fog just surrounded me, and it was like the universe was telling me, like, it's all right, I got you. Like, you're hidden, you can shoot. And I shot. And I took that's one of my favorite shots ever. It's a self-portrait.
When you say self-portrait, you climb up there with a tripod, set it up, put it on timer, and then just have it click a bunch of times while you're out there.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. And Become the Storm was 8 months later, last February or January. And about a year ago. And that was on the same bridge. I drove down there because I thought there might be snow. There was no snow. I left my wallet in the gas station. I drove back. I had to go back and get my wallet. When I went back and got my wallet, then the snow came. So I parked the car. I got out. I climbed the bridge. I set up for their self-portrait and like shot it in the middle of like a blizzard, like a winter storm. It was like one of my favorite pieces ever. Like like photographically, it is so beautiful. I mean, like it almost looks like the bridge is underwater. There's the snow. It's a self-portrait. The bridge lights look amazing. The wind, the clouds coming through the light. Like it's just
that texture you get like in that part right at the front left. Yeah, you feel how cool that is, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know I've already asked it. When you're out there, you're feeling bliss. You're not feeling fear. Like, I get scared. I live in the mountains. Like, when it's slippery out, just walking to my car sometimes it a little bit feels dangerous.
Yeah, stepping onto that bridge cable was slick that day. I like slid a little bit, and I was like, ooh, like I got to be careful, Yeah, that was
I lived in Hong Kong for a long time, and there are a lot of urban explorers there. Some really cool work. Have you thought about going out there? Any cities you kind of want to hit next?
Oh yeah, Hong Kong's on the list. In fact, it might be next, to be completely honest with you. I just talked to my boy the other day about what we want to do next. And Hong Kong is high up there. It's just going to depend on how things are going with the protests and social unrest there right now. If it's good to go, then Hong Kong honestly might be next. I think Hong Kong or Turkey or Brazil. Yeah. I just came back from Norway, and that was fucking amazing. I took some of my best work ever there.
Norway in the winter, man. Yeah, well, if you want to, we should chat Hong Kong. Like, I lived there through a lot of protests, and I actually do know a few urban explorers out there, but also, yeah, that's home. That certainly was home for a very long time. Let's chat a little bit about NFTs, and I'm kind of curious, how you go from, how you go from being a very, very talented photographer to being one of the absolute best-selling NFT photographers on the planet. Like, why don't you walk through a little bit how you went from discovering this to being someone who got discovered?
I discovered it when I got out. I discovered it when I was still in. My boy that was handling my film was like, dude, people are talking about these NFT things. We should mentor work and try to sell it to raise money for my bond, the $400,000 bond I was on. Well, we couldn't figure it out. So then I got out. I learned about everything. I minted a few pieces on Foundation. I sold them. I got onto Super Rare before Where My Vans Go, and I started selling a piece or two there. And I got onto Where My Vans Go. Or I released Where My Vans Go, and it got very successful. But honestly, like, I was never into anything like if it wasn't for my situation, I don't know if I would have got into it. I did not get into NFTs because I was like, NFTs are the next revolution of art. Or, like, I got into NFTs because it was like, listen, man, I don't have any other way. Like, like the family I come from, the things that other people in my family do for work, like I could not do when I got out, like in the situation I was just in. So I was like, well, if the whole goal is to be an artist, this is just a new medium. I just look at it as a new medium. I don't care how I get paid. I just want to get paid for my work. I don't care how my work spreads. I just want my work to spread, right? So
And what was like the first sale? I mean, I always think it's interesting that, with a lot of artists, it's one collector who is like a turning point, like a collector sees your work and buys it, and then suddenly your work just completely up levels.
you know,
In terms of price point, did you have any experience like that as far as just on ramp?
Cactus was my first collector. He was collecting a shit ton of photography way back when, and um, he collected a few of my pieces and like, DM'd with me and like made me feel a lot better and shared some of his own experiences and like, helped me that way and like, had just helped me a lot. And so that was a huge help to get me like on my feet to have a little money to like get clothes. And like, I think my first two sales were like 2 ETH, 2.5 ETH, or like one of them went for like 5 ETH. It was pretty decent, like, and I didn't see the like things that take off to where my Vans go. In that final drop, like VVD had bought in, 888 had bought in, Anonymous would be the one to buy the auction piece on the final drop for 55 ETH, bought number 83, and that like completely changed a lot of my like when like the final drop changed a lot because I dropped all 40 pieces at 10 ETH and people thought I was crazy and I was like, no, I'll sell it. Like I will, like, and we sold out and plus sold all the auction pieces for above 20 ETH, and, people just didn't people just didn't really believe at that time, but I did. And things really launched after that, in the following months, like the floor and going into last year, like the floor would go all the way up to, 69 at one point. We're having a natural retrace right now with the market, but I don't know, man. The collection's got so much more leg room. We sold two pieces for over 100 ETH, and there's so many pieces that still haven't been resold or whatnot. So where we're at right now is a beautiful place because we're growing steadily. Like we're growing, like the art's being sold, like resold, at a steady pace, and even through this market, there's been resales and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't want to move fast. I just want to move correctly. I'm in this for life.
It's a unique collection in the sense that I feel like these sell at similar prices to your 101s. Like
Yeah.
there's such a premium on Where My Vans Go and on just that series that, your 101s, I imagine if you drop more, like I imagine they'll command new prices. But that is one of the things that I've noticed about this.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is like, I try to keep it streamlined too. I won't let someone be like, well, this is a Where My Vans Go 101 and this is a 101 is a 101. I won't let people like people are going to sell it or resell it for what they want to. And this market has shown that. But I will not put out a piece of work and sell it for something that I feel like is less than what it should be sold for. Like I will let the market do what it does and determine price points and stuff like that. But I don't look at it as like, well, this isn't a Where My Vans Go piece, so it should be priced lower. Like, no. Some of the pieces that are not Where My Vans Go pieces have taken a long like work and, like, and compositionally and stuff like that are, in my mind, greater, right? Like Where My Vans Go has the provenance and history and significance and, and cohesion that it does. So, like they're very coveted, but I think that any of it is a 101 is just a 101, and I don't let people make me think differently about one versus the other.
I tweeted, I think this was maybe 6 months ago, no, longer, it was like 8 months ago, about your success. I said, I think Drifter Shoots is one of the best stories of NFTs, one for having a 50 ETH floor for a photo set collection of 125 pieces. But then I looked at how'd you do it? And I said, one was that obviously just the work is very cohesive. It's just great storytelling and the visuals are identifiable and mind-blowing. but you also have 125 interconnected images, and the shoes kind of tie them together. Obviously, the area, like just the from above and intensity of the images drives them together. But through the 125, you get a bunch of collectors who are out there promoting your work. It's enough people that you have people who are doing your marketing for you as well.
Right.
Then another thing is like you share your story, of incarceration, and make people want to. You've always been very open about this story throughout, and people want to see you do well. And then the last thing is that you're always on. You're constantly doing the vibe checks, posting images, videos of yourself, and just keeping people really connected to you as an artist. And I thought those were a lot of the key components that for an NFT photographer, NFT artist to do well, because there are so many phenomenal NFT artists out there, so many phenomenal NFT photographers, and there are only 5 to 10, 20, who knows how many that are capturing headlines and numbers in the way you do. Are there other things that you would kind of throw in? Does any of that resonate, or advice? I'd be curious kind of your thoughts for emerging folks and whatnot.
People aren't going to like what I got to say, to be completely honest with you, but I'm always straight anyways. Yes, like all those things are very, very good, right? And I think it's hard, especially now because of the market that we're in, because NFTs are not brand new anymore, like what I would say is like, yes, like your best marketing is not you, it's everybody else that owns your work and supports your work, right? So it's 10 times better if you hear something coming from somebody else's mouth rather than, your own mouth, like I could think that I'm the greatest photographer alive, but I want other people saying that, like, my biggest thing is like your greatest marketing is just phenomenal work, right? And this is something that I fear is being lost sometimes in the NFT space. I see artists, and it's like, do you want to, like, everyone likes having popularity. Everyone likes feeling good. Everyone likes logging on and like being supported. But I even had to ask myself, I was like, okay, I'm spending more time here daily than I am like, thinking about my artwork or creating art. I was like, I don't like this, because you'll burn out that way. Like you will, like you're as an artist, you're meant to be focusing on your art more than anything. If you're a painter, go paint. If you're a photographer, go shoot. If you're a writer, go write. Whatever you do, like your best marketing is just being the best. Like, what do you want to be known for at the end of the day? I don't want to be known for being like an online warrior in 50 years. I want people to be like, dude, Drift or Isaac or whatever they want to call me takes the best fucking images on the planet. Like, this dude is insane. This dude is focused. This dude cannot be derailed, cannot be stopped. Like, I want all my critics to be like, I don't like him, or I don't agree with everything he stands for, but he's fucking good. Like, he's great. Like that's what the detective on my case said in the interview he did on TV. He was like, well, there's no doubt that like I want to be that good, and artists should aim to be that good that like you're undeniable. Like, you don't have to, like, in my ideal world, I'm not in my ideal world yet. In my ideal world, I'd come online, maybe, yeah, like I would be online a lot less, like and I would come online and I'd maybe drop a batch of work and it would sell, and I'd go back to creating like masterpieces, I'd use the money to go to different places to execute a different vision or whatever. And I feel like the NFT space, while it's amazing for artists and it does empower artists and whatnot, it has also forced artists to have such an online presence and try to appease so many different people online that I don't feel like they can healthily do that all the time, especially at the levels that like me and other artists are at, and appease and fulfill their artistic vision. And like, I feel like they'll get too spread thin. And you have to look at the big picture. Is this just for this little micro niche community that we're at right now? Or are you thinking about the entire world, right? Because you can be good in this space But what about the rest of the world? I, for one, am not going to alienate the rest of the world just because I have success in NFTs. I want to have success in NFTs and in print and anywhere I go. I want to put out the best fucking documentary. I want to write the best fucking book. And that can't happen if I'm online trying to be like a niche internet like micro celebrity, you know? And like the space can do that to artists as they start gaining success, is like now your collectors and everybody else wants time from you and you have to be on GMing and like, but like that's not healthy for artists. The best artists are going to go, they're going to make the best, most jaw-dropping work. They're going to come on, they're going to drop it. It's going to sell. It's going to break records. It's going to do great things. And then they're going to go back and they're going to go back to focusing on art, which is where artists should be. And I think that the connection between artists going straight to fans and straight to collectors is amazing. But I think that it's dangerous because the expectation has become that artists should be so present. Artists should not be so present. Artists, how can you get the vision when you're watching everybody else and what they do and what they want from you? You can't get vision that way. Like, you need time away. You need separation. I believe in fostering community. I believe in fostering a good collector base. But if I would have taken a step back a lot sooner, because I didn't learn this and feel this until my brother died. And then I felt like, man, I'm too in this, What about what I want to make? Like, what about shooting for hours? What about writing this book? Because that's what's going to live forever,
Yeah, I think it is incredibly easy to get sucked into the vortex. Just the
super
world
easy.
of comments and praise. I mean, there's that dopamine hit that comes from the retweets, from the praise, from people saying they love your work, and inevitably the more negative stuff comes. And
you got to be indifferent to both.
What's kind of, I mean, to the extent you're comfortable talking about it, what do the next couple of years, or let's just do 1 year. I know we can't plan 2 years ahead. Like, what I don't mean you, myself, or most people, but what are you thinking for the next year?
Well, I think like it's fair to say that I could do the next 2, but the biggest thing for me is like,
then do it, man. Don't let me stop you.
Like, I've had so much success in this space. I don't think that this year I will have as much because I don't think I can be as present. And I realized that I have to just get out the box altogether. Not saying I'm like leaving the space, but I mean, like, by the box, I mean like frame of mind and like thinking that like people equate visibility to productivity, and that's couldn't be further from the truth. Like, and so I have a book to write, about very, very personal stuff. So I have, people want this story, they want it in the whole. I have a documentary with an award-winning company and one of the best film-making companies ever. And I have millions of dollars put behind my telling my life story. I want to do the best possible. Like, this is what's going to live forever. Like, I can't be there to tend the garden and meet everybody's needs all the time. And more often than not, people don't care where you're at as long as their bags are going up. It's a very fickle space at times. But I'm like, when people are like, I'm building, quote unquote, like, I'm building for forever. Like, I don't look at last year or the year before and be like, yeah, like those are the glory days. Like, no, sure, market was great and then market wasn't great and whatever, but I don't look at any of it. I'm thinking about the next fucking image I'm going to take that's going to completely wipe your mind. I'm thinking about the documentary that you and your kids are going to go and sit down at the movie theater and watch, and your kids are never going to be the same again. They're going to grow up and they're going to think different. They're going to move different. They're going to act different because, like, they watched Isaac Wright on TV tell his story, and like, that's a piece of art. That's my next year, is making what may be my greatest piece of art in my entire life, and writing this book, and like, because I love to write too, and I'm sure I'll make multiple books, but like, these are so much more significant to me than having a very strong online presence during this time. I don't plan on releasing a lot of work this year. I plan on continuing to shoot my best work. Like, I'm pushing limits like I never have before, but I don't plan on releasing a lot. I plan on just fostering my secondary market. I'm part of Band's 2023 global campaign. I do have some awesome things coming with Bands, finally. So, and I can share that and say that now. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm here for people that understand longevity, like,
Yeah.
and with my story and with my success, it happened in such a short amount of time that people forget that, like, I'm not just, if I was just trying to take pictures for that reason, I would have just retired or something, I've been through enough in life, but
I think that,
that's not it.
yeah, I think what you're saying is a lot of what I think about with NFTs a lot, which is, I think people are getting a decent sense of what makes NFTs do well for 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone knows what makes them do well for 5 years, but the best guess we have is that the person who created them, the company that created them, the project it's associated with, becomes something that's very widely recognized, that people want to be part of, that people respect, that people admire. So I think that what you're talking about, I think kind of, even though it's not even deliberate, but I think it even plays in something that will do well by your collectors anyway.
Right, because you're going to see a lot of artists that are content just being a Web3 successful artist. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all, right? But if you want mainstream adoption and you want all these things that we talk about, guess what? You got to break outside the box. You got to start working and getting your art into different places. You got to start, pushing boundaries in other places. Like, that's all stuff you have to do if we want this mainstream adoption that we're talking about. I already reached the Web3 space. Guess what I'm trying to reach now? The whole fucking world. Because that's only going to help what I'm doing in Web3, right? And
for sure,
like, that's the type of vision that I don't feel like many artists have. And to be honest, not a lot of artists can, but I believe in myself, and whenever it comes to, like, how do you bet on yourself? So I'm like, after everything I've been through, that should tell you everything you need to know about betting on me. If I was going to quit, I would have done it a long time ago, like, I'm in it. I'm in it. I was in it when I had nothing. I didn't get into NFTs because it was like, I stumbled onto them one day. Like, I got into it for my survival. I made a way. I got successful in the process, but that should let you know what type of worker that I am. That should let you know the vision that I have, and that's why I said, if I did that with so much weight on my shoulders, I don't have that weight now. I'm free to exercise, and I have more connections, and I have more abilities and stuff like that. So the sky is truly the limit, I'm shooting for the entire world. I don't look at myself as like a Web3 artist. I'm just an artist, and I think that my aim is not the space. The space is a part of it, but I want the world,
One thing I like to do to end these podcasts is go over a few topics and just, it can be hard, but try to give like 1 to 2 minute responses.
Okay.
Just like your quick response to a bunch of to some of your photos and to a few different topics. So one thing I did want to bring up is Grails. We got Grails 3 going on right now. You were a Grails artist, and this was the piece you put out. I don't think a lot of people knew, I think we associate Drifter Shoots with something different from this piece, but after I see the connection. But why don't you tell us about this piece? What was your goal here, and what'd you think of Grails in general?
I thought Grails was awesome, and it was like my first exposure to the proof ecosystem. This piece was titled Dissociation, and came at a point in my life where, I had to make a big life decision to really be myself and live my truth. And this was right after I got out of the Army and was going on to, like, pursue shooting full time. And, like, I did that, but I was so confused. And I was confused because there were still parts of me that were living for other people and what other people thought, and was not just living unapologetically, like, as myself and whatnot, And so I love this shot so much. And I don't want to be, I refuse to let anybody put me in a box. I don't want to be, I just wanted to be like, if I take an image, people look at it and they're like, that's incredible. By the end of my life, I will have shot tons of different things. It won't
That's
just
awesome.
be in the sky.
So going to the next one, this image here, this was, I think, your most recent drop, one of the most recent drops, but got a
Yes.
ton of fanfare. Very, again, a totally new look. Why don't you tell us about this image?
Yeah. So I've had this image in my mind forever. Photographically, it is nearly impossible to like. It would be nearly impossible to snap all in camera. So I did. I surfed the train. That's me and my friend Artie on the train. I surfed the train in Paris. I set up a tripod down by the river to have and then called my friend to have him click the shutter as we were going past. I took a step
How
or
far
so.
away was it?
Um, it's not too far. It was like, I'd say like maybe a football field, maybe a little less, maybe
Okay.
a little less. So
Just
not
like a
not
zoom lens
horrible.
then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was with a zoom lens. It was with a 24-70. I took a separate exposure of lightning, and then I stacked it in there, and that's how we made foreshadowing. Because
And how many editions is this piece?
it's an edition of 6, but we have 5 are going to collectors, and one I'm holding on to for probably future museum placement.
Okay. And what do you think of art of this millennium? I see it pop up. I see there's just so many new platforms. As a data person who's analyzing space, it's really hard to keep track. But how has AOTM been for you? And like, what platforms are working the best for you?
I think AOTM is good. I think it's amazing. I think the curation is really, really wonderful. I did feel like Super Rare, especially for photographers, was getting very, very saturated. And it didn't feel like Super Rare anymore. And a lot of people won't like that take, but that's the way I felt. Um, and I mean, it's been great. Like I've had nothing but good experiences with BVD and the team. And also the biggest thing for me was that I'm not on Twitter to be a promoter. Like, I don't like artists, and especially at high levels, like having to like make their work, promote their work, sell their work, like it's exhausting. And again, to my earlier point, you can't focus on the art the way you should be. So putting it in AOTM, having VVD and the team reach out to collectors, connect the collectors with the piece, it is fantastic. It is something that the space has needed for so long, and they're acing it. They're doing an amazing job.
I don't want to let what you said earlier drop. You said you're keeping one for a museum. Is there more you can say about that?
Not at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really. I think museums getting involved in the digital art scene is going to be kind of hopefully a next big catalyst for the space.
Yeah.
What are you collecting right now? I know. I think I know that you're into Azuki, right? But curious, what are you buying?
I do. I have 36 Suzuki, I think. And
It's a couple.
and I have almost 100 beams. But I collected them, the bulk majority of them, back when Suzuki first came out. From the beginning, the branding, the team, everything checked out, I've collected a little bit of art here and there, but mostly I've just been saving lately, learning different things. I went through my first big tax year and didn't have the infrastructure set up like I should have. So I had a huge tax bill and how to learn about that and but I'm always collecting art. I will always add punk, as much as I'm bullish on 2 things long term when it comes to PFPs. That's punks and that's Suzuki. I will go long on those all the time.
How many punks do you have?
I have 3.
Nice. What about open edition? That's kind of a theme recently. I know you had an open edition over the summer. Any lessons about that?
I mean, yeah, I had an open edition before photographers were doing open edition. So it was I was, and I did it on my own platform, and like First Day Out is my most personal, intimate project, and there's a lot I want to build out. And I'm going to build out from First Day Out, but uh, I think like when it comes to open editions, like one, it's a good way to gauge your support. It's a good way to gauge. It's a good way to grow your fan base and collector base. And I look at it like that. Yeah, I didn't promise anything with First Day Out. I promised aiding towards social justice reform and people and like helping people that were in the same situation that I am. I've done that and I'm doing that. 55 people freed in Cincinnati in the same county that I was incarcerated in and counting. And but and that was it. That's what I promised. I think with the recent boom in open editions that I think a lot of different things. I think some are cash grabs. I think some I think for some artists it's a bear market and it's them looking to hop on a trend and like make a little money because the market's tough and whatnot. But I think I don't think they're bad. I think that they're good for some artists, but I honestly think more artists should be focusing on one of ones. Your one of ones your one of ones is like your source. Everything else trickles down from your one of ones, right? So I look at it like build out your fan base and your one of one structure first, or then do an open edition, or then do a when people can't afford your work. But for every artist, that's not going to happen and whatnot too. So to each their own, I don't judge. I think like if people think it's for them, let it be for them. But I don't. I think they're an excellent way to do a lot of interesting things in their space too. Like what I have planned for First Day Out is, first it was the first of its kind, but also I don't think anybody will really see and understand what I have planned for it, until it happens, So
Yeah, I feel like the key to all this stuff is just transparency.
Yeah.
You tell people, and I tweeted this when you did First Day Out. It's collectors know what the situation is, and do you want to buy in or don't you? And as long as the project is transparent, then investors will learn as they go.
Yeah.
Last question. Just people who are moved by your story, who want to do what they can so that you don't have innocent people getting incarcerated on $450,000 bail, and people who can't help them or defend themselves are stuck in the position you are in. What are little things people can do?
First thing is just educate yourself about the criminal justice system. Like understand what cash bond does to people, specifically people of color and low income people. Second of all, like learn ways to get involved, like directly. Like people need help with a reentry. They need help with getting back on their feet after they get out. You can donate to organizations that are actually making change. And that's one of the next things for me is building my own nonprofit that I can designate and like tell what to do, and like we can go and have a bigger hand in all this. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's like everything starts with education. Like take the time to actually listen to people that have been incarcerated. Most people don't care until it affects them or their family, but this is something that everybody should be looking at because it affects, like the carceral system is central to American politics and also like money and a lot of different things. It's a very essential thing.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. One thing that just always hits me when I do these conversations with artists is two things. One is a deep belief in your work, and just seeing how much you believe in your work, believe in yourself after everything you've been through, just stands out so strongly. And the second thing is I find successful artists in this space are very authentic, very true to themselves, and people see that, people feel attached to it, and I think you just represent that all in spades. So yeah, it feels terrible hearing everything you've been through and redemptive to hear kind of where you are right now. I'm sure there's still work to do, but really excited for what lies ahead.
Likewise, Sam. Thank you so much for having me.
right, that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you would like to help us out, head on over to proof.xyz and click on the reviews button at the very top and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks so much. Take care.